Hello, my name's Tysons. Welcome to myboxingcoach.com. So, Mike Tyson boxing techniques. At the end of this video, I will hope that you will have a good view of my thoughts on Mike Tyson and the techniques that he used, I should say, to get to the level he was at. There's some good insights in there. You know, I'm going to go through a 2-minute video with you that I've done previously, and then I'm going to unpack that a little more with 5 key elements that I think you can take away with you. And I finish off also on a recent question that I've had, a cool question actually. So again, I'll finish off on that one. First off, let's have a little look at this Mike Tyson video. It's labelled Peekaboo. It's only 2 minutes long. Have a little look at this. The Peekaboo style, devised by the late great Cus D'Amato, obviously boxing trainer of Mike Tyson, but before that he had guys like Floyd Patterson, Emil Griffith amongst others. And he devised the Peekaboo style, and it's become a little bit of a sort of legend in its own lifetime, if you like. But the Peekaboo is really quite simple, and I coach elements of it, but I don't sort of coach it per se, because I see a lot of stuff that there's risks of it that you need to be aware of. Peekaboo is basically a defensively driven style that uses defense as attack, and it's geared to allow shorter people to compete with taller people at long range. So the hands stay high all the time, okay? And there's lots and lots of slips and rolls combined with explosive foot movements in order to draw the lead, let the opponent's shot go over the shoulder and respond with straight shots. If you looked at Mike Tyson, he used to do an awful lot of straight shots off his slips. So he'd slip, as the shot would come, he'd slip out, slip in, and then come back up with a straight jab. And he'd out-jab guys who were 6, 7, 8 inches taller. I like to see the slips happen at the legs. A lot of people do it at the waist. I prefer to see it happen at the legs, okay? It looks a bit different, but I just think it leaves you more effective. One of the problems is people often come very square on. Not such a problem when you're up close. If you go square on, you can generate a lot more power and leverage. At long range, if you're square on, there is risk involved, okay? So now I could do a 10-minute video on Peekaboo. That's a 90-second boxing tip on the Peekaboo style as coached by Cus D'Amato. So there you go. Defensively driven. It's about those with a lack of reach maybe competing at long range. It's about slips, it's about rolls, it's about explosive feet. That's what Tyson was all about, all encompassed in what people broadly call the Peekaboo style. So let's unpack that a little more. First though, I remember when Tyson first hit the scene, and I was an amateur boxer at the time, and all of a sudden lots of boxers started trying to emulate Tyson 100%. Very few of them managed to do it with any success. You know, so you had sort of kids from this neighbourhood. They'd go on sunbeds to darken the skin so they had a great tan, and they do all this, and it'd all be big wild hooks or big hooks, and you know, a lot of the time they just get taken apart with good solid defensive boxing. So don't pigeonhole yourself and say I'm short or I'm this and I'm that, therefore I must box like Mike Tyson. I think good boxing is good boxing. Doesn't matter whether you're short, whether you're tall, doesn't matter whether you're powerful or not. It's good to emulate these guys. It's good to try and learn from their style, especially if you box for fitness, especially if you're primarily about keeping fit with boxing, because if you can theme your backgrounds, like your shadow boxing and your heavy backgrounds, makes life much more interesting. If you do 6 rounds on the bags and each round you try to emulate the style of a different boxer, it makes things much more interesting and exciting. But don't pigeonhole yourself, you know, don't say I'm going to box in a Peekaboo style. Have elements of it, but be prepared to box in other ways. That's just a broad point. Okay, the trigger. Tyson was, I mean, I'm talking here 1986 to 1988. He was a very intellectual fighter. He was unbelievably capable in those 2 years. And his trigger was about always drawing a reaction, and that's what allowed him to steal that ground. So it'd be, you know, he'd feint, and then he'd do one of his moves. He'd let his jab go, but a lot of it was feinting. He was all about trying to trigger the opponent in order to get the opponent to react, to try and stand their ground and throw a shot so that he could use his superior footwork and body movement to get up close. And after that trigger, he did so much damage on the way in. Everyone talks about, you know, it's easy to underestimate. I mentioned in the video, Tyson's long range work was sublime. The damage he did on the way in. I remember the Larry Holmes knockout, where the first knockdown, he comes in off the jab and then unleashes this sort of long right hook, right, and explodes on the side of Holmes' head, drops Holmes for the first count. Beautiful shot on the way in, comes after the trigger, bang, jab, draws the opponent, lets the shot go. And interestingly, when he dropped off the pace, when he wasn't that Tyson of those 2 years, the trigger was one of the things that went. That ability to make the opponent do something. Okay, the second thing is his stance switch. So I'll demonstrate it now. Now I've put a video link down below where I go into this in quite some detail. I think it's like a 10 or 15 minute video. Point being, I'm going to use this center line, and I'm going to use this line here to show you. And the point of the stance switch is to open up the center line to attacks with hooks and uppercuts. So if I'm going to stance switch that way, let me just demonstrate it and then I'll break it down a little. And I'm going to stance switch that way. Okay. When we go that way, first thing that happens is a push. Now the point being, I need to pull this leg back a little bit, and this leg needs to get round there, okay? So push, come round, and you can see I've got the line on the floor there going from the toe to the heel. 1, 2, toe to the heel. Front foot comes back a little bit. So I've got attack lines up the centre line. This one is a little bit more complex. I'm going to push off this leg, and that leg needs to come back there. So what you've got is 1, 2. So I'm technically in a southpaw stance now to open up attack lines to the centre. Push there, 1, 2. That's the stance switch. And what that allowed Tyson to do was open up attack lines up the centre line. He also used angled side steps. But that stance switch, you remember him, he'd kind of move in and he'd throw a jab, and then he'd switch around and open up that centre line. So that was a really effective part of what he did. He also went square as he was getting up close. He allowed his body to square up. He allowed that stance to go frontal there once he's at mid to close range. And that allowed him to deliver huge power. And again, I've done a recent video called Go Square for Power. I'll put the link up at the end of this video, and I'll put a link down below so you can go away and watch that. It's basically just about opening up the square stance and delivering huge power at close range. Don't go square at long range because it just destroys your ability to be mobile. There's your long range stance. And there's a stance you can use at close range. You can still hold that at close range, but you can go square at close range as well. Favours the big power shots. And then finally, punch in bunches. Punches in bunches. So, you know, you've got the opponent in front, hooks round a centre line. So he'd throw 3 and 4 punch combinations during that 2-year spell, 86 to 88. became a lot more patchy as years went on until he ended up just like, he was just another big hitting heavyweight later on. You know, he was still, that's probably unfair, he was still extremely sort of dangerous. But I don't believe the Tyson of sort of 92, 93, 94 was even close to being comparable to the Tyson of 86 to 88. And that was down to the absence of he hadn't lost any speed as such. It was down to the absence of the trigger, and it was down to the unwillingness to throw punches in bunches. So attack the centre line and hooks and always go for 3 and 4 shots. So that's breaking it down. And it's, again, I mean, you only have to look at, I mentioned in the video, I said Cus D'Amato trained Emil Griffith. He didn't, it was Jose Torres. So 3 D'Amato fighters, Floyd Patterson, Jose Torres and Mike Tyson. You can see elements of Peekaboo, but quite different, you know, quite different styles of fighters. A lot of that's down to physiology, the speed, the power, the aggression, just the general frighteningness of Tyson at his peak. But yeah, you know, it shows across, you wouldn't necessarily say those 3 fighters unless you really understood boxing. You'd say, okay, I can see that the same trainers working with those 3 guys, but it's not easy to spot. They brought other aspects of their own style. So don't pigeonhole yourself into being Peekaboo, but learn everything you can off someone like Mike Tyson. I hope that little spin through and following that video has really helped. I got a question from Lloyd Webster, and the question was words to the effect of, can you provide some advice on when to initiate and fire the shot? So I wonder whether that video's gone some way to helping that. But what I would say, look, boxing is a pressure business. If you are not feinting, you should be punching, and if you are not punching, you should be feinting. You've got to put lots of pressure on. You've got to seek to trigger the opponent all of the time. So either initiate or initiate for the purposes of counter punching. So constantly, you know, you don't contrive things in such a way. You get in and you feint and you go and you feint and you go and you go and you feint. You just get it going. You don't overthink things. Soon as you overthink in a boxing ring, you're on the road to becoming a victim. Okay, so don't overthink. Feint or fire, fire or feint. Right? Boxing's a pressure business. Download the Beginner Boxer Toolkit. Look, it'll just get you where you want to be in respect of solid understanding of your boxing training. Okay? My name's Tysons. Thank you very much. This has been myboxingcoach.com.